Hi, welcome to the next part. So yeah, we've done a lot, but we don't really have anything to show for it from like a normal user's point of view yet, right? Like unless our app is just something for, an admin to basically manage data, we haven't really done anything, on the Parse front end so far. So we're going to be getting into that in this video. And I do want to mention, we're going to start by, just using building sort of like a normal web application. So this isn't an API that we're making right now, like you would use if you're making, an app or something that needs to communicate through a JSON RESTful API. This is like you're making just, a website someone comes to, and each page they're on, has its own view and template and so on and so forth. So let's get started. We're going to go into our content. And we'll see we have this views thing here. And I'm going to kind of show you how this works. We're going to start very basic here. And I'm just going to install HTTP response from Django.http. And we're going to make a view. We're going to make a view called index. And index will have a request passed in. And a request is basically has all the metadata and stuff about, the request itself, such as maybe what get parameters are in the URL or who the user is, if there was some kind of authentication, IP addresses, like all this kind of stuff. It's got a lot of great things inside of it that we can make use of. But for this very basic example, we're just going to return an HTTP response saying hello world, as one would expect. So we have that view in here, and then we need to do a couple things. So we need to go into our URLs for this, which we actually don't have that file. So I'm going to make something called urls.py. And inside here, we are going to, from django.urls, import path, which we'll need. And from dot, import views is one option. That'll just import all the views together. Or we can say dot views import index, and we'll just do it that way. It's a little bit cleaner in my opinion. And then we just have to set something. This is kind of a magic variable, and I call it magic because we're not doing anything with it. We're not exporting it in the sense. We're not passing into anything. Django essentially knows, like, if it's a urls.py, it's going to be looking for this, and this is going to allow us to create a route. So here we'll create our first route, and it will be a path of blank, meaning we're just at a blank place in the namespace, no parameters in the URL. And here we would pass in the index. And we can also give it a name. Let's give it index, keep them the same. Then we also have to go to our main URLs, which is in our project. And you'll see this is where we have the URLs for manage, but we're also going to make another URL, and we'll just call this content because this is within our content app. And here we would actually want to import in these URLs here. For that, we just need to import one more thing. So we're going to do from django.conf.urls import include. And this will actually just kind of allow us, instead of putting all the URLs in one place, we can kind of break them up on an app by app basis. And what we want to do here is go include name of the app content.urls. So I'll save that. And if we did everything correctly and go back to here, let's get rid of manage and instead replace it with content. So content and then blank, right? Because we want to go inside the content namespace to just an empty path. So it's not content /1, that would give us a 404, but just content blank will give us our hello world. So very basic view. We're not doing anything dynamic. We're not doing anything crazy there. But let's actually make this make a little more sense. So let's have our path, but let's actually make this namespace something like track, maybe tracks /. Then I'm going to get rid of this index, and we're actually going to call this track list. Okay, and so back here, I'll just put these side by side so we can see them a little bit better. Instead of importing index, we're going to import track list. However, I'm going to do what I was alluding to before, just to make this a little bit easier for when we're making more. So we're going to go from dot import views. So this will import all the views, and that way we can actually just go views dot, and we'll see track list is an autocomplete option there. And this will just keep our imports a lot cleaner. We're just importing, everything that's within here is going to be accessible through views, and then we can go views.tracklist. And let's just call this tracks as well. And I need to make sure I save all the files, of course. And now content/tracks we still see the hello world, which is, what we should expect at this point. But let's actually, get some data back. So within our view file, let's go from content.models, import track. And right in our request, we're going to make an object called tracks. And here we get to do a bit of our ORM. So here we can actually go track, so the model itself, .objects.all. And what I'm just going to do is actually just print out tracks and kind of see what happens when we hit this. So nothing's going to change from the user's point of view, but we should see in the console we have a query set of tracks right here. So track, test track, and we only have one, so that makes sense. Okay. Now we obviously want to sort of display this in the response as ideally HTML. So to do this, inside our content, we're going to make a new folder called templates. And inside templates, we're going to make another new folder with the same name as our app, which I know is a little bit strange, but it's the way that Django is expecting it to be. And in here, let's just make something called tracklist.html. Okay, and I'm actually just going to go hello from template just to show this working. And now in our imports here, we're going to go from Django.template import loader, because we actually want to load this template. So now down here, we're going to make template equal to loader.getTemplate. And here we just pass in basically something based on this path. So we know it's already in the templates folder, but we need to go within content, and then we'll call this, tracklist.html. Then, instead of just returning a response like this, we actually go template.render, and we have to pass in our context, which doesn't exist yet, but I will just make something temporarily. So let's just make something called context equals this. This is essentially where we can have any kind of data that our template can access. And then we also have to pass in the request as the second thing. So we're just passing through this request right here, so it has access to what it needs for this to work. So let's now refresh, and we say hello from template. Cool. So it's actually loading this file now, which is nice. Now, inside this file, we might want to do something a little bit better. So for instance, we want to maybe loop through our tracks. So we can go like this. Basically the template syntax, use any like operation I want to do, such as a loop or an if statement. We actually mark it with these sort of like braces, then a %sign, and we can do something similar to like Python syntax. We can go for track in tracks, and then we have to make sure we also end our for loop. So we just go end for. And in here, maybe we have, something like some bold text, and we can actually do things like track.name, track.title rather. Now, if I was just to do this now, we would see nothing. And it's because we're not actually passing the tracks in. So what we need to actually do in our context is go tracks equal tracks. So we're just taking this, passing it through again. I'll get rid of this print statement, it's no longer needed, and we will save and refresh, and we should see that. However, I made a mistake. We need 2 of these braces to kind of denote that it is, a template variable. And now we actually see test track coming through. And of course, we could also maybe have a p tag where we have track.lyrics or something like that. And there's the lyrics. And just to make sure we're doing this right, let's just go back to our admin, which we've put under the manage namespace, and look at our track, test track. And yeah, it was test 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. And what else is cool is we can also, maybe I'll keep lyrics, but let's do track. We can actually go to album, because it tracks on an album .name. So we can actually go through sort of like 2 layers deep here, and we'll actually, if this saved, it's actually title. There we go, test album. So test track, test album, cool. All right, so we got a little bit of a little bit of display happening here, but let's kind of mimic, something like the Django admin and do this like in some tabular data. So we'll have a table, we'll have a tr, and in here we would have, let's have track.name, track.title again. And what's some other data we know about a track? We have album, but we'll say, I guess we could put album as well. So I'll just grab this. And we'll have another TD, just a table cell. And we won't worry about the lyrics, but let's also have another TD. And here I'm going to put a link, and we're just going to do href equals just empty for now, maybe just a number sign so it doesn't actually go anywhere. And we'll say details, which won't do anything yet, but it will in the future. And I realize this for loop shouldn't be looping around the whole table, just around the rows. So we'll move this, even though it won't look like a difference. Okay, cool. So we now have that. So let's figure out how we can actually bring someone to a new page when they click on this. So let me just zoom out one more time. And we have our track list. Let's just copy this. And let's have something called track detail. Now, detail is going to be a little bit different because we're actually going to be passing some extra context here. We're going to be passing, the UUID of the track. So let's do track detail, and then we'll call it track UUID, which will make sense in a bit. Now, in this case, we don't want to get all tracks. We want to go and we want to do track.objects.get. And here we can pass in where UUID is equal to track UUID, like this. And here we want to actually render track detail.html, which we haven't made yet. And we're just going to pass track. We're going to rename this track like this. And everything should be good. Now we'll make our track detail. And in here, we're just going to do, let's say an H1 maybe, and we'll use track.title. And then maybe we do track.lyrics on our detail page, just to show an example. Okay, so we have that, we have this. Then we need to actually go to our URLs again, and we're going to do tracks/, and here we will actually do UUID, because that's the type of value that's going to be passed in. So this could be int, it could be string, str, and we want to actually call this track UUID. We want to keep this the same name as this, just so we don't get confused in the future. And here we would do track detail, and we would call this just track detail. And actually, I should call this one track list. It's not required, but it helps when we're doing linking between things. You'll see in a bit. And we need to, of course, update our track list to actually go to that. So for now, I'm just going to just kind of go, because I know what this is. I know that it's going to be /track. Let's just double check. Oh, /content /track / and then we would do track.uuid. Let's just refresh this page. And if we hover over this, we'll actually see it's trying to go to, I know it's kind of tiny, but it's trying to go to track /F8E9 something, something, something. And if we go here, we have a 404, and let's find out why. Probably because this should be tracks, not track. Okay, let's go back. Let's see. There we go. So now we're brought to the detail screen simply by passing in the UUID here. And this is why, I think using UUIDs are cool, right? Instead of this being track/1, it's a sort of random unique string that you can't just like figure out, oh, I can just go to track/2, cool. And there's cases where that might be thing you want to do, but I just like using UUIDs for this type of purpose. Okay, so we have cool linking and stuff like that. Now, you noticed I made a typo here, and there's something great we can do in Django to kind of solve issues from that happening. So what we can do, I'm going to copy this, comment the first one out, and erase this just to show a better way to do this. So within the string here, we were going to open up with a %, like this, and we're actually going to type URL, and within sort of like single quotes, we're going to take our app name, so in this case it's content, and then .views, and then we're going to do what do we call it? Track detail. And by what do we call it, I mean, what did we call it here? Track detail. And that's why I like to just keep everything the same, because I can look, either there or there, and they should be the same. Then we have to actually pass in track UUID equals, and here we will use track.uuid. Let's see if that works. Content.views.trackDetail not found. And I realized we actually don't have to put the namespace of the app and views because we're already in that namespace and views. So we actually just do URL track details, And if we refresh, we actually see here, and it's the same sort of thing. So this made it a lot easier than us having to remember, you know, the actual path, that we didn't make this error where we had track instead of tracks. And the great thing is, if we ever change, say in our URLs, we actually, you know, we just want to make this T, for instance, and I'll just save that. We'll actually see that when we overlay this, it's just content/T, and everything will work without us having to change our template. So that's just a really good practice when you're doing these kinds of things. You know, don't just sort of put in URLs like this, because if you ever change anything, you know, you're going to have a bad time. So we're just doing URL, then the name of the view, basically. And again, it's the name of how we declare it here, name, which I kept the same as this. Just makes things, you know, easier. And then any parameters need to be passed in this case, track UUID, because if we look at the URL, it's expecting track UUID to be passed in. We need to put it after the closing string, and then everything just works. Okay, now what happens if I go to a link and for some reason, you know, it doesn't exist? Like if I change this here, I get, you know, a page not found. Okay, cool, that kind of thing. We might want to handle that a little more gracefully. So we can use a way to basically do a get object or 404. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a try, and we're going to put the track within try. And we're going to go cat except track dot does not exist. And here we can handle things a little bit differently. And in this case, I can, for instance, I could raise a 404. So I can raise HTTP 404, which is something I actually have to import. Where does it import from? From Django.http, we import HTTP 404. So we can actually, you know, raise our own 404 here and just say track does not exist. And let's do that now. And we get the same thing because we're in debug mode. But if we weren't in debug mode, which we can actually test really quickly, let's just see what happens. Now, because I'm changing something in my environment, I need to completely restart my server. And now we just get this more, you know, generic one. Let me change this again. These like generic things, but you're seeing we're actually getting, you know, this 404 error specifically in our server. It's logging it, but we could handle it, you know, any way we wanted. We could, for instance, have another, you know, page that did things, or, you know, probably a good way to do this is we still allow it to kind of happen, so we don't actually throw something. But then in our track template, which is track detail, we actually could wrap this all in a if track, and then make sure we have our end if. But we also have an else here, saying else. Just say something like track not found. So let's see if that works. Save this. So this will look for it. If not, it won't really squawk at us, but the track would be null at this point. And let me set my env back to true, and actually realize what's actually happening here. So let's stop this. Let me go back to where we had the track list. So let's click this. This will work. The reason that we're actually getting just a 404 without this even happening is because I was actually just I was changing what a UUID looked like. I was making a different length. It wasn't even matching to that URL pattern. So I'm going to, instead of deleting one, I'm just going to change this to a different number. And then we need to, oh yes. So right here, we'll actually just make track equals none at the start, so that the scope of it is, you know, still here. It wasn't able to access that because it was within this. But now we'll see track not found, because we still passed the track in, but it was null. And in our template here, you know, if there is a track, we get it. If not, we say not found. So that's how we can kind of deal with that sort of stuff. There's a shorthand of doing this that doesn't make us have to do all this stuff. So I'm just going to comment this out, and we can actually go track equals get object or 404. And in here, we have to import this. So this is a Django shortcut from Django.shortcuts. We're going to import get object or 404. And in here, we have to first pass in, I did not type it right, get object or 404. So we go like this, and we have to pass in the name, track, and then we pass in UUID equals track UUID. And now, that's just a bit cleaner, and same kind of thing, we'll still have, what happened here? No track. So we're actually getting, you know, the Django sort of error, no track matches the given query, as opposed to, you know, our own error, but that's just a nice, you know, a nice way of doing things. You know, comes down to how you want to handle it. If you want, this kind of did the, you know, just throwing this sort of 404 in one line, but if you kind of want to handle things in the template yourself, you know, maybe doing it this way makes more sense. Yeah, it really just depends on, you know, what you're trying to do here. Now, obviously, this is just, you know, an example, and, you know, it doesn't look beautiful or anything. Like if we go back, you know, to this list, this list rather, it's not beautiful. And, you know, we could, of course, you know, put things like this whole file right now. Like if we were to view the source of this, you know, it's not even valid HTML because we don't actually have, you know, HTML tags or anything like that. And, you know, we could, of course, in the template, you know, create an HTML tag, and, you know, maybe we have like a shared nav that we want to use, but then we're going to be copying and pasting, you know, all these things between all of our templates. And this is where template inheritance comes in. So what we could do is we could create a template here, and I'll just call it like base template.html. And here we could, you know, create our HTML, and I'll just use my little shorthand for this. Yeah, this is all fine. And basically we can say, hey, we want to inherit this within a template. So to do that, we just have to go to the very top of our file, and we can go %extends, and what do we call it? Base template.html, and then make sure we close that. So I'll just save both of these, and if we refresh now, oh, and then yes, so we have that. Now if we actually view the source here, I believe we're going to see, oh, nothing. We actually need to put content/base template, and we have to remember to be on the detail page because that's the one I'm doing this on right now. So if we refresh now, we see nothing, which is interesting, but if we view the source, we actually see that sort of base template here. Now, what we need to do inside our base template is, for instance, in the body, we actually do something called block content. And then we actually go end block. Then within our track detail, we extend it, and we also have to mark everything as block content. So we will go block content, and at the very end in this case we'll go end block. So there we have everything, and if we view the page source now, we'll actually see there's sort of our template. Here's the HTML we're actually rendering within this template, and then the closing of it. So we're essentially, everything within block content is going to be put within this block content here. So that's really handy because now we can have one place where maybe we have Bootstrap loaded and we have like a header and a footer and all that kind of stuff. And all we care about on a template by template basis is the content within there. So yeah, just something I wanted to touch on. Obviously, an important part of building websites is having, you know, some shared code between, you know, your different pages. So we can do this, we can do that there, and on tracks, we can basically do the same thing on the list. So I'll just grab this, and we'll extend everything here, and block. And then if we go to our list, you know, although it looks the same, we actually have this sort of wrapper. So let's just see something. Let's go to Bootstrap. I'm just gonna do the CDN one rather than trying to, you know, fully install Bootstrap. But I am just going to copy bootstrap.min.css, specifically the HTML tag. And let's put this in our base template. Sorry, I just think I closed my base template. Oh, there it is, base template. And let's just put it here and just kind of save and go back and refresh. And we'll see things look a little bit different because we actually are using Bootstrap now. For those who aren't familiar, Bootstrap is a pretty it's been around for a while, but it's at version 5 now, and it's just a great, you know, something like Tailwind if you're familiar with that. Just a little bit simpler to work with for, you know, our purposes. But it allows you to, you know, just use CSS classes and stuff on your elements to make things look pretty. So for instance, in our list, we can actually, you know, go class equals table, and like table, I think it's like table striped, I think. And oops, I didn't mean to do that. But now we actually have this cool table, and you know, we can put all of this, in fact, maybe in our base template, we wrap everything in a container so that we kind of get that nice sort of like wrap that comes with this. And we can, you know, for instance, put py5 just to kind of give it some space. Sorry, I meant my5, I think. Then it gets like spaced out a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And yeah, stuff just looks a little bit prettier. And of course, you know, we could grab, you know, a bootstrap nav, like, you know, grab any of these components, right, and put it here, right, on our container, and come back here, and we actually have like a little bit of a navigation, you know, if we set things up properly. So, you know, you can use Bootstrap, you can use Tailwind, you can write your own CSS, you know, whatever you want. But I just wanted to show, like, you know, it can look pretty if you know, do the time. We can also, you know, for instance, go class equals button primary, and then we get this nice little button here instead of like that link, which still brings us to this stuff, and we can have everything, and it can look great. So yeah, that's you know, the basics of just templating your views in Django. And I think next what we're going to do is we have like kind of like our list, and we have our retrieve. Let's actually make a way to create, you know, essentially a track within, you know, the front end rather than through the management side. So we'll see that in the next video.